South Korea's defense ministry warns any nuclear attack by North Korea will result in the end of the regime, responding to the North's nuclear threats against a U.S. nuclear-armed submarine visiting the South. The government and the ruling party expand tax breaks for companies reshoring to South Korea as they come up with a tax code revision. The famous Boryeong Mud Festival is back in Korea's Chungcheongnam-do province. We take you to that very site this evening where a variety of events take place. It's July 21st, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin this evening with a strong warning coming from South Korea's defense ministry. It says any nuclear attack by North Korea will result in the end of the regime, responding to the North's nuclear threats against a U.S. nuclear-armed submarine arriving in the South. Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea's defense ministry responded to North Korea's warning of nuclear retaliation with a warning of its own on Friday. The ministry said that just as South Korea and the U.S. made it clear during the NCG meeting, North Korea will face an immediate, overwhelming, and decisive response in the event of any North Korean nuclear attack against the alliance that will result in the end of the North Korean regime. North Korea has heavily criticized the docking of the USS Kentucky, a nuclear-capable strategic submarine in South Korea, and the launch of the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group as a blatant and direct nuclear threat. North Korea's Defense Minister Kang Sun-nam, in a press statement released by North Korea's state-run Korea Central News Agency on Thursday, called the situation the most serious stage of the U.S. planning and executing a nuclear strike against DPRK. He added that the DPRK's law on nuclear force allows them to take a necessary course of action when it is clear that a nuclear weapons attack on the country has been carried or is imminent. Kang emphasized that the deployment of strategic weapons such as the nuclear-capable submarine falls under the conditions of North Korea's nuclear doctrine that allows the use of nuclear weapons in retaliation. He also said that using military force against North Korea will lead to disastrous consequences for both South Korea and the United States. The USS Kentucky arrived in the southeastern port city of Busan on Tuesday, the first port call from a U.S. ballistic missile submarine in Korea in 40 years. On the same day, the first meeting of the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group was held in Seoul. The Pentagon responded to the statement on the previous day, saying that the submarine's port call to Busan was a planned military exercise stemming from South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to Washington in April, emphasizing that the move was part of its commitment to extended deterrence in response to North Korea's continued nuclear threats. The port visit was also referred to as a representation of South Korea and the U.S.'s ironclad commitment to defense. The Pentagon also said that South Korea and the U.S.'s efforts to protect their citizens from North Korean nuclear threats do not violate UN Security Council resolutions, unlike North Korea's nuclear provocations. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The meeting of top nuclear delegates representing South Korea and the U.S. perhaps couldn't have come at a more critical time. Meeting in Tokyo, they reaffirmed to work together to cut off illicit funding for North Korea's missile programs and urged China to play its role. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more.
Following the recent series of ballistic missile launches from North Korea, South Korea's top nuclear envoy Kim Gun held a meeting with his American counterpart Sung Kim in Tokyo, where they strongly condemned the regime's nuclear threats that have been raising tensions on the peninsula. Seoul's foreign ministry said the two sides decided to strengthen cooperation to cut off funding for Pyongyang's ballistic missile and weapons programs, such as illicit cyber activities, overseas workers, and illegal ship-to-ship transfers. The two officials also said they will continue to communicate with China, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, to encourage Beijing to play what they called a responsible and constructive role. Friday's meeting comes a day after the officials met for a trilateral meeting with their Japanese counterpart, Takehiro Funakoshi. The three reaffirmed their commitment to achieving denuclearization on the Korean peninsula.
We will strengthen our close communication and coordination to bring North Korea back to the path to denuclearization.
One expert told Arirang News that because of the COVID-19 situation and the economic sanctions on North Korea, illicit cyber activity involving IT workers is one of the very few ways for the regime to find hard currency. He also said that Seoul and Washington's efforts to cut off these activities have so far been working.
So South Korea and United States detected this whole situation and tried to block all those the illegal activity of the North Korea, and it's quite successful so far. And because this is a very important route to get the fund for the North Korean regime, especially for the Kim Jong-un, for the developing nuclear missiles.
In April, South Korea and the U.S. simultaneously slapped sanctions on a North Korean banker tied with the North's illicit cyber activities, making it the first time that the two countries have both simultaneously imposed sanctions on the same individual in the cyber field. 배은지, Arirang News.
The U.S. continues looking into the whereabouts of Travis King, an American soldier who has recently crossed the border into North Korea. The Pentagon says it still hasn't heard from the regime on the incident. Or Choi Min-jung with more.
Washington is continuing to work toward the safe return of the U.S. service member Travis King, who defected into North Korea earlier this week. But despite such efforts, the Pentagon on Thursday said it was unable to obtain any information about King's whereabouts or well-being.
We don't know his condition. We don't know where he's being held. We don't know the status of his health.
The Pentagon spokesperson said the U.S. has not heard any communication or correspondence from North Korea about this incident.
There is no sign of engagement from the North Koreans. We've always wanted to ensure that there is military-to-military cooperation and communication, but sadly, there's not on the North Korean side.
North Korea has remained silent about King. In the past, North Korea state media has reported on the detention of U.S. nationals. The 23-year-old American soldier stationed in South Korea fled across the inter-Korean border into North Korea on Tuesday, while on a group tour of the joint security area located along the demilitarized zone that separates the two Koreas. The Pentagon said the U.S. Army has launched an investigation into this incident, which is being led by its counterintelligence personnel in coordination with U.S. Forces Korea. It was again reiterated that its key priority is to bring King home. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The Korean government and the ruling party agreed to expand tax breaks for companies reshoring to South Korea as they discuss new tax code changes this week. More tax benefits are also in store for employees of small and medium-sized businesses. Our issue has all the details.
The ruling People Power Party and the government held a meeting to discuss new tax law changes for 2023 and said there will be expanded benefits for companies that located production facilities overseas but have since reshored to South Korea. This was announced by the PPP on Friday based on the results of the meeting held 2 days ago. Chief Policymaker Park Tae-chul, the chair of the National Assembly Strategy and Finance Committee, PPP Representative Yoo Sung-gul, and officials from the Ministry of Finance participated in the meeting. The participants recommended the government extend the tax reduction periods for reshoring companies to 10 years, up from the current 7 years. At the moment, companies can receive a 100% income and corporate tax exemption for the first 5 years after their return, followed by a 50% reduction for the next 2 years. The new plan expands the 100% exemption to 7 years and 50% for the following 3 years. The PPP also called for income tax reductions for young people working at small and medium-sized businesses and small restaurants, business owners, farmers and fishermen, among others, in need of help after struggling financially during the pandemic. The party noted that the government said it would reflect on such requests in its new tax changes. The party and the government will also double the current limit on non-taxable income for maternity and childcare benefits from the current 100,000 Korean won to 200,000 Korean won, or around $156. This is to combat the low birth rate, aging society, and the declining population in rural areas, the party explained. They also agreed that South Korea's economy will improve in the second half of the year, but acknowledged that active tax administration is needed amid the uncertain global economic situation and high inflation and interest rates. In addition, the PPP vowed that it would do its utmost best to, quote, reignite the growth engine of South Korea's economy and lead the nation into taking a new leap forward. 이시후, Arirang News.
The nation's finance ministry says it'll mobilize all possible measures for a swift recovery and restoration from the damages caused by recent downpours. Or Moon has details of this financial support plan.
The monsoon season, which has devastated the country for the past few weeks, caused significant damage to infrastructure, farmland and residential areas. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho addressed these problems and laid out a plan to support those affected at an emergency ministerial meeting on Friday. With more than 17,000 people being displaced from their homes due to heavy rain and over 2,000 still unable to return to their homes, the government will be using the budget set aside for natural disasters to fund the restoration of residential areas. Tax support for those affected will also be provided, such as a temporary extension of tax payment deadlines. Farmland was also heavily damaged in the downpours. Over 340 square kilometers of farmland was submerged in water, 6 times more than during last year's monsoon rain. For scale, this is the equivalent of nearly 50,000 soccer fields.
The government will come up with a sufficient compensation plan as quickly as possible by evaluating the damage and actively taking suggestions from those on site.
The plan includes funding for restoration to compensate for damaged crops and equipment, as well as for livestock killed in the flooding. Farmers affected will also be able to claim insurance within a month of claiming for their crops and land. And as a consequence of the flooding, prices of food products such as lettuce and chicken are expected to become increasingly unstable. The government will attempt to stabilize the supply chain by funding the replantation of vegetables in greenhouses. A tariff rate quota will also be introduced for 30,000 tons of chicken by August, along with the importation of 5 million fertilized chicken eggs and funding of around $62 million to increase stocks of chicks. Furthermore, people will be able to enjoy up to 30% discounted prices for products affected by the rainfall until the supply chain has been stabilized. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports continue to face a challenge following sluggish shipments and a continued weakness in China-bound shipments. According to the Korea Customs Service, exports for the first 20 days of July were valued at around $31.2 billion, down more than 15% compared to a year ago. Should this trend continue for the rest of the month, it'll mark the 10th consecutive monthly fall in overseas shipments. The Trade Ministry said on Friday that exports to China and ASEAN nations dropped over 20% in the first half of the year. On the other hand, shipments to the U.S. and EU saw a slight increase. China-bound exports dropped mainly in the IT sector, such as chips and displays, while car exports drove the rising shipments to the U.S. and EU. South Korea is now back on Japan's so-called whitelist of trusted trading partners 4 years after it was removed. Japan's public broadcaster NHK reported that the government there had finalized the process of reinstating Korea as a Group A nation on its whitelist, and the resultant preferential export treatment went into effect as of Friday. This follows a series of recent summits between the leaders of South Korea and Japan. Seoul restored Tokyo to its list of preferred trading partners back in April in response to Japan removing export curbs on 3 key materials for semiconductor and display manufacturing. The trade dispute was fueled by a 2019 court ruling in Korea, ordering Japanese companies to compensate victims of forced labor before and during World War II. In Ukraine, the southern city of Odesa has come under intense air assaults by Russia in recent days following Moscow pulling out of Ukraine Green Deal. Kyiv says Russia has been striking infrastructure associated with grain exports. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Ukraine is struggling to defend its southern city of Odesa following 3 consecutive nights of attacks. According to Ukrainian Air Force, it destroyed just 5 of 19 cruise missiles overnight into Thursday, a far lower success rate compared to previous attacks targeting Kyiv. Ukrainian officials say it's due to less advanced defense systems operating in the southern regions of the country. The Russian Defense Ministry says these strikes were retaliation for the Ukraine's attack on the Crimean Bridge earlier this week, adding it targeted facilities linked with Ukraine's seaborne attack drones. However, Ukraine has refuted the claims, saying Moscow is targeting civilian infrastructure associated with grain exports, especially as it refused to renew its grains export agreement on Monday. Among the buildings damaged in the attack on Odesa was the Chinese Consulate General. A Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said it's assessing the extent of the damage and offering any assistance needed. And according to UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned the sustained attack on Odesa. The spokesperson added that the attacks have consequences well beyond Ukraine, as a negative impact on global wheat and corn prices is already being seen. Meanwhile, the U.S. sanctioned more than 120 Russian and Kyrgyzstan firms on Thursday for what it said were their contributions to Russia's war on Ukraine. The U.S. State Department said the latest move would further cut off Russia's access to critical raw and manufactured materials, which finance the production of weapons. Also included in the list of those sanctioned is a North Korean who supported the Wagner Group by helping with the shipping of weapons to the mercenary group. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Today is Jungbok here in Korea, one of the 3 hottest days of the year. With heat wave alerts issued across the country for our arts and culture segment this week, our Song Yujin is out to show us one of a way to beat the heat. Yujin, I kind of guessed as I see your face, but first of all, where are you?
Well, hello, Jungmin. I'm currently at Daecheon Beach in Boryeong City in South Korea's Chungcheongnam-do province. We're roughly about a 2.5-hour drive south from capital Seoul. And the reason why I'm here, not in the studio, is, as you can see from my face and also the people behind me, today marks the start of the famous Boryeong Festival. Now, for those who may not be familiar, you might wonder why Boryeong for mud. And that's because this coastal city in Korea is famous for its sea mud that's really rich in minerals known to be great for your skin, hence the Mud Festival. Now, to talk about the history of this festival a little bit, it first started small back in 1998 as part of the city's efforts to really promote its mud-related businesses like mud cosmetics. But over the years, it has grown into one of the most well-known and one of the most cherished summer festivals here in Korea, attracting more than 46 million people over the past 25 years. Now, this year's edition officially began this morning, a little before 10 a.m. And although we are heading into the evening now, the atmosphere is still brimming with a lot of excitement. Let's first take a listen to what some of the excited visitors had to say.
Our summer vacation just started and we found that the Boryeong Mud Festival starts today, so we headed over here. I'm so excited because there's tons of hands-on experiences to enjoy.
It was a great time. It's a lot of fun. We came here yesterday and we went on the beach and saw stuff there, and now we're doing the mud stuff, and then later on it'll be the music. It'll be a great time.
No wonder it was named one of the Asia's top 3 major festivals by the International Festivals and Events Association. And as this is the first mud festival without any social distancing rules.
You're right, Chongmin. That's why the staff here say that this year's festival is back in full scale for the first time since 2019, which is before COVID-19 hit the world. And they expect a total of 3 million visitors to hit the festival this year. And to cater to this need, the festival this year will run about a week longer when compared to last year. It will run for a total of 17 days. And to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, all the regular attractions are back, such as the giant mud pool, the mud slides, and also the steeplechase. But the highlight this year is actually the newly added attraction called the mud barbecue, where people hang onto a rotating pole, trying not to fall into the mud pool. And to make the festival more enjoyable for everyone, the festival has expanded the size size of its family zone for kids. And for the first time, it has also introduced a mud pool for dogs for pet owners. And if you're really into beauty and if you want to try out mud cosmetics too, you can try mud spa indoors too.
And I also heard that there will be other events taking place there besides mud themes once. What are those?
Well, you're right, Tongmin. So EDM concerts, EDM performances will take place 3 to 4 times a day here at the Mud Square every day. And also tomorrow there will be the World K-pop Festival featuring a lot of K-pop groups such as A-Pink and On and Off. And I really want to point out that the festival decided to make this concert free of charge to really show its support to all those who were affected by the heavy torrential downpours that caused a lot of damage, pounding the country this week. And separately, world-renowned singer Psy will also be holding his Summer Swag concert next Saturday, as well as the World DJ Festival on August 5th. So I want to say that the festival is jam-packed with a lot of exciting activities and performances too. So if you're interested, you can find more information or purchase tickets at the festival's official website. And for our international viewers, interpretation services are also available in English, Chinese, and Japanese. So if you're trying to have some muddy fun this year, Boryeong is the place to be. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Tony.
Definitely. Thanks, Yujin. Have some fun there. Sweltering conditions once again prevailed here in South Korea. Heatwave advisories are currently in place for most inland regions. Parts of the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province are especially hot with warnings in place. Although we do have frequent showers in the forecast for the next few days, chances are high that some regions will continue to be under heatwave alerts. Another round of monsoon rain will sweep across the nation tomorrow. The monsoonal rain front is quite powerful, and this will bring long spells of showers until Monday. Please be extra prepared beforehand as local downpours are possible. As for the amount of rainfall, northern Gyeonggi-do province and Jeju Island will see heavy rain of up to 150 millimeters. The Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province will see up to 100. Morning temperatures will be a couple degrees higher tomorrow. Seoul will start off at 25 degrees Celsius. Rainy spells will dominate for the daytime. Highs in Seoul will get up to 32, Gwangju 27, Daegu and Gyeongju will be reaching 30 degrees. The capital region will see showers coming and going until next Wednesday. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world. That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. Heavy rain is forecast again for the weekend. To stay safe.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.
먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hello, I'm Ernei Müller, Ambassador of Slovenia to the Republic of Korea. Right now, I see Korea shining in the world. Korea has many strengths and the global presence is already here. Slovenia will continue to establish the presence in the international scene. This is also one of the reasons why we opened the embassy in Korea last year. I always thank Arirang TV for playing a big role in promoting Korean information to the world so that many people can access Korean content and get to know all aspects of Korean culture. I hope that people around the world will continue to communicate and sympathize with Korea. Resonating the world, Arirang.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
K-animation, loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. K-animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K-animation, befriending children all over the world.
Hello everyone, it's Friday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. K-pop remains popular around the world. Evidence is seen with K-pop album sales in the first half of this year hitting a new high. Japan is the biggest overseas market, followed by the US and China. Among those topping music charts is Jungkook from BTS with his latest solo debut track, 7. And others include NCT Dream and Zero Base One. Now, what is behind their success and how is K-pop's popularity contributing to a global interest in Korean language and culture? To talk about this and the latest news from the K-pop scene, we invite Bernie Cho, president of DFSB Collective. Bernie, welcome.
Good to be back in person, actually, this time.
All right. And we also have Adam Chung, assistant professor of Korean culture at Arizona State University. Professor Chung, thank you for your time.
Hi.
Hello. Now, first question to our Bernie. Now, right after its release on July 14th, Jungkook's official solo debut single 7 is proving to be a big hit, shooting up to the top of the many music charts, right? What more are we expecting from it right now?
Oh, the fact you even mentioned big hit, that was just low-hanging fruit. But yeah, this has been a massive hit. You know, as much as people worried about when BTS went on hiatus, it turns out that with each and every member going with solo projects and solo pursuits, it almost feels like a divide and conquer because as a band, they were breaking records. Now, each of the BTS members seem to be beating each other in their solo pursuits. Every time an individual member releases an album, an EP, a single, a video, or even a viral video for that matter, they're topping each other. And so right now we can honestly say that BTS is not only and had been the biggest band in the world, but each of these solo efforts are now breaking K-pop solo records, solo artist records. And so it's really hard to keep up with what 7 is going to do because every few hours, every few days, there's always a new development. You know, he's literally breaking the internet. He had a fan meeting and a listening party and the servers went down. So he shifted over to another social media platform. And, you know, the great thing about the BTS members is that they're so interactive with their fans. I mean, they don't really need a press release or press conference. You just have to tune in to their Weverse chats with their fans. And from what little I can gather so far is that, number one, he is obviously working towards an album that people are just waiting for that to finish. I did not know this, but he actually has a Starbucks drink that people are now just bending over backwards to get. I didn't know this. I go to Starbucks every day, but I got to try it. And so, but you know, right now his video is doing extremely well. The remixes, you know, full disclosure, I actually like the explicit version of 7.
Me too.
That came to me as a surprise. But yeah, it's just, I mean, he basically has locked down, I think, the song of the summer. And so, you know, we'll see how it goes. But it's so easy. I think I can sing this at a norebang or karaoke. So thank you, Jungkook.
All right. I mean, it's really good to hear how each and every member of BTS is doing really great right now. But Bernie, the BTS member is not the only one that is making us excited here. NCT Dream made their comeback with their full-length album, ISTJ, and sold over 1 million copies on the very first day of the sales alone. And new group Zero Base One and Stray Kids as well have seen millions of sales. What's behind such successes of these K-pop acts?
As much as I would like to say it's the music, I'm going to go out there and say it's not. It's the fans voting. It seems like, you know, the fans of these individual bands are not only looking at and focusing on their favorite boy band or girl band, but I think they're looking to the left and to the right to see how other bands that are in that sort of same league or same tier have done. And so it's really become kind of a competitive arms race that if band A sold this much, band B needs to sell a little more. And so it's really escalated so that not just one, but more and more bands are literally breaking records every month. And so, and it's not just within Korea or across Asia, it's now beyond Asia. And so, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but right now in the US, K-pop albums are the best-selling CDs right now in America. They dominate the top 10 for the first half of this year. I was a little bit crushed. There was a slight tear in my eye when I saw that many K-pop bands are now outselling one of my favorite bands, Metallica. I thought I'd never see that day, but here we are.
So I guess fandom is one of the many reasons why the K-pop bands are successing, right?
Oh yeah, so I mean, to me right now, when I see all these different bands competing and breaking each other's records, it almost feels like I'm watching a musical version of the English Premier League, and each band is vying to get into the Champions League. And so far, it just seems like the competition's been incredibly healthy, and more people are now becoming aware of all, not just the big bands, the great bands, but more importantly, the new bands as well.
All right, I see. Now, Professor Zhang, staying on the K-pop popularity front, K-pop album exports for the first half of this year reached a record high according to the Korea Customs Service. And an interesting aspect is that Japan was the largest K-pop importer, followed by the US and then China. Now, what do these figures suggest?
Well, Japan has always been the biggest market for K-pop exports. And I think what's really interesting here is that the U.S. surpassed China and became the second biggest market. It shows that the enthusiasm and craze for K-pop in the U.S. continues to be strong. And K-pop is becoming more mainstream in the U.S. than before. And we could also think about some of the reasons why the Chinese market fell into the third biggest market. And one of the reasons could be the ban on K-pop idols on Chinese TV, which started in 2017 when Korea installed the THAAD missile defense system, and China saw that as a security threat. Another factor could be the rising anti-Chinese sentiment in South Korea, which could have affected Chinese fan support. Anyway, this kind of development is really interesting because it shows how the topography of K-pop is always changing and shifting to show the socio-cultural conditions.
Right, I see. Now, Bernie, so thanks to this growing popularity of K-pop, fans from around the world are getting more interested in Korean language as well. And according to the American music sales data provider Illuminati, Korean language content had the third largest streaming share in the U.S. So what's behind this, successful reasons?
Yeah, the company's actually called Luminate, but it does almost feel like a little bit of an Illuminati in the sense that people were really stunned and taken by surprise by how big K-pop is. They kind of sensed it, they kind of felt it, they kind of heard it, but Luminate actually laid out the numbers. And I mean, people are really, I just got back from Los Angeles. A lot of industry people are utterly stunned. I mean, these numbers are literally making them numb because they knew K-pop was big. They didn't realize it was this big. Some of the takeaways that I saw when I read the data analytics, and again, I was surprised, was that globally, Korean language songs, Luminate didn't do a top 10, top 100, top 200 survey. They did a survey of the top 10,000 streaming songs, both audio and video. And when they did this analysis, Korean language songs were the fourth most popular stream songs in the world. English was #1 for good reasons. Spanish was #2 for obvious reasons. Hindi was #3 for very simple, obvious reasons. Korean was #4, and then Portuguese was #5. So all those different languages represent, continents, regions, most of the globe, and then there's Korean. And then when they did a breakout of certain markets around the world, they did a sample of, I believe, about 6 to 10 different markets. What was surprising to me was in Indonesia, one of the biggest and fastest growing markets in the world, Korean language was #3. In South America, in markets like Colombia, Korean language was #3. And right now in the United States, this took a lot of people by surprise. Among the top 10,000 songs streaming in the U.S., English, obviously #1, Spanish, obviously #2, Korean was the third most popular language of listeners in the U.S. And so this is something that a lot of people are just sort of digesting, this data, but it speaks tremendous volumes of the progress that K-pop has come so far.
I see. Now, Professor Chung, how can interest in other countries' languages lead to interest in its culture? I mean, and is K-pop really contributing to making global fans become more interested in Koreans, not only the language, but also its unique culture and history?
Oh, definitely. Global fans are learning Korean language, and they're studying Korean culture and history to engage more with their favorite idols and also with other fans. In fact, universities in North America has already witnessed a rise in student enrollment in Korean language and also content classes. According to Modern Language Association, there has been a huge rise in student enrollment in Korean language courses. Actually, from 2009 to 2016, there's been a 78% increase. And this is really remarkable because just, language enrollment in total hasn't really risen recently. And also I've been seeing more and more universities advertise for professors and teachers who can teach Korean culture and history and also language. And on social media, I see more and more fans posting about how they're learning the language through smartphone apps. They're reading on Korean culture and history to educate themselves. And I myself will also be teaching a language course in fall and a K-pop course in spring. So I'm really excited to meet students who are interested in learning more about K-pop, Korean language, and culture.
You must be. Now, Professor Jung, one more question. So that being said, what kind of support from the Korean government or other entities do you believe should be in place so that global fans can continue to be interested in Korean culture and language?
Well, I think the Korean government should continue to support institutions that help promote language, culture, and history. For example, the Korea Foundation or the Academy of Korean Studies has been really instrumental in supporting research in Korean studies, courses, and also special events in universities. And also Korean cultural centers, which are placed in several cities globally, have been promoting Korean culture and language through special events and courses. And I believe that it's really important for the government to continue supporting these kind of institutions so that global fans can access these kind of events and courses in their local area.
Right, I see your point. Now, Bernie, let's come back to the K-pop industry. Now, JYP Entertainment and Republic Records K-pop competition series A2K premiered recently. And for those who might not know this, the show is about creating the first ever American girl group, right, through the K-pop training system. Now, first of all, what's your reaction to the shows that have been released up until now? And what are the chances this group will grab the attention of the global music market?
I think it's a great show because, again, even though it's a brand new thing in the West, in the U.S., that this idea of exporting the secret sauce of K-pop to America, and there's no better ambassador to do it than JYP. In many ways, he's very much the product of sort of growing up in the U.S. And, one of the first things he did right out of his gates on the first episode was pay tribute to the influence that African-American black music had on him growing up and how it really resonated and really sort of crafted the JYP sound. And so right off the bat, Americans were like, wow, this guy's actually acknowledging the impact and influence that black music, African-American music had on K-pop. And so the thing with me is that, I've been very fortunate to work many years in the industry where, when I was at MTV, and I saw firsthand, how JYP, not only as himself as an artist, but as a producer and more importantly as a mentor, has really sort of honed the craft of not only discovering but developing artists. And so for those who watch all the various audition shows, he's probably one of the few people that has been able to discover a band and not only make them stars but superstars. And so for him, this idea of exporting the business model of the audition shows, this is not his first try. He has proven success in China. He did a joint venture collaboration with Tencent Music and created a huge boy band in China, but using the K-pop training system. He then teamed up with Sony Music in Japan in 2019, 2021, and they created a thing called the NITSI Project, where they also produced a hit J-pop band, girl band, but using the K-pop training system. And then last but not least, one of the biggest bands right now touring is Twice. And a lot of people sometimes forget that Twice was actually discovered through an audition show that JYP had done in Korea. So for him, this is really an extension of a very successful track record he has had, not only as an artist but producer, but basically the master chef on creating this amazing dish of K-pop training. And so the idea that he's applying it, and again, Republic Records is one of the biggest music labels in not just the US, but in the world. So the fact that they're leaning into him for his expertise and experience to discover the next big girl band in the US, I think is going to be a fascinating watch. And again, the smart thing is sticking to the basics. Instead of going on network TV or cable TV, straight to YouTube, straight to social media, and already it's had a huge impact. A lot of the videos have gone viral, and so I'm fascinated, I'm curious, and I'm tuning in. I want to see who the next big girl band will be coming out of the U.S., but with the JYP stamp.
All right, we'll have to wait and see. Bernie, I'd like to ask you this, actually. So it seems like this K-pop training system has become one of a kind. What's your view on this? I mean, is it really special?
Yeah, I think in the sense that the K-pop training system, for a lot of critics, they want to sort of knock it as being sort of a factory model. But the reality is that that sort of model worked in the U.S. When we talk about the Motown sound, Berry Gordy, he used to be a car factory employee, car factory owner, so he saw the efficiencies of building stars and creating music in that manner. Now, I think that the K-pop system has very much evolved, taking a lot of the best practices from Japan and from the US and from elsewhere, and have really sort of put a creative centrifuge on best practices and have created something very unique. And I think the success speaks for itself. The fact that not just one, but multiple management companies have their own distinct style of discovering, developing, and training these acts. This is something that's become highly desirable, not just for Korean trainees and aspiring artists, but you see more and more new artists and trainees coming in from all over the world wanting this. And so this idea that now instead of having kids from Southeast Asia or from Greater China or from the US coming to Korea, now you have these Korean basically gurus going outside of Korea to sort of plant these different systems in place. And so it's interesting to see that the K-pop business model has now moved from the artist and the music now to the system and to the business models.
I see. Professor Jung, I'd like to also ask your opinion on this. What do you think about this K-pop training system?
Well, like Bernie said, the idea of the idol was first inspired from J-pop and the media industry in Japan in the early 90s. But we have witnessed K-pop companies solidify and systemize this idol making. And now K-pop training has become one of its own kind. We've seen SM Entertainment create the first kinds of, idol groups such as HOT and SCS through exclusive auditions and also in-house training. And soon after, other companies like DSP, YG, JYP, they all adopt this system. And then in the 2010s, we also see the rise of audition TV programs, which has now become another hurdle for trainees to overcome to make their debut. And I think these kind of programs also benefited from technological developments because the program viewers can also vote and express their support for a specific trainee to become an idol. And I think, today K-pop system has really created its own kind of training, and it's really very unique.
Right, I see. Professor Jung, we have been talking about big agencies like YG Entertainment, JYP, but regardless of the agency's, sheer brand or size, K-pop groups backed by independent labels could also land on big charts as well. And one of that example is actually Rookie girl group 50/50. Now, before we delve deeper into the legal battle the group is now involved in, what do you believe made their success possible?
Well, there are multiple factors you need to create a hit song. For example, you would need a really good song that appeals to listeners everywhere. You would need a high-quality music video, slick choreography that has some kind of very attractive or dynamic performance that can be used for social media promotions. And actually, 50/50's label recognized the social media TikTok as very useful for promoting the group's song, and so they would showcase the group's charm, and they would also promote TikTok challenges, which many say was the main factor for the group's sudden popularity. But like I said, it's not just about TikTok, not just about social media. There are multiple factors that you need to create a hit song.
Right. Now, Bernie, I have already said, but 50/50's agency, former production company, and the girl group itself, they are all currently embroiled in this legal battle. Now, first of all, what is this controversy about?
I don't think we have enough time to sort of go through all the details and nuances, but essentially you have three parties that equally were responsible for the hit behind 50/50 and, more importantly, the song Cupid. And unfortunately, all three companies sort of aired dirty laundry about their grievances, and the timing could not have been worse. You know, as they're peaking, as they're, you know, creating new milestones, and again, what made their success a little bit more special was they basically were the underdog. They were the small, they were the indie, they were the scrappy act that no one saw coming. And right when they were on the brink of just going even bigger and even wider, they got in this very public, ugly fight, pointing fingers, and I would maybe go so far as to say some middle fingers at each other. And the timing could not be worse. You know, instead of the hits, now you're starting to see the misses, the missed opportunities, because, you know, they lost a great opportunity to promote the new Barbie movie, because they have a song in there. They have basically canceled from big festivals that are coming up in the next few weeks and few months, and it's widely rumored they lost a lot of endorsement deals. And so it's really tragic to see this, but I hope the industry takes a lesson in terms of basically what not to do, because it became very apparent through this airing out of grievances that there were a lot of things that could have, should have been done better. But it's unfortunate, and I think that of all the people who are basically suffering from this, unfortunately it's the artists who are basically bearing the brunt of this ugly battle.
Right. I mean, we'll have to wait and see how this legal battle develops. But Bernie, how do you hope this feud will, you know, eventually be resolved?
Well, I don't know if it's going to resolve amicably. I think we've passed that point. What I do hope, and I think, is I hope that the industry learns a few lessons from this episode, because I think that it should not have come this far, but a lot of very important issues were raised, and I think, you know, unfortunately in Korea, when things move fast, you always like nod your head, we'll get around to it, we'll get around to it. I think if anything, it's become very apparent, more professionalism, more paperwork, more clear guidelines and more clear guardrails on what to do and not to do, because as they became successful, everybody wanted to claim not only their success, they wanted to claim the band. And that's where I think a lot of the problems arose.
Right, I see. Now, I'd like to ask many more questions to our experts, but unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Bernie, for your insights. And thank you, Professor Chung, for your time and your insights. We really appreciate it. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be next Monday with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the weekend, and goodbye.
Korea. Some people call it the country of Taekwondo.
People are more interested in Korean culture and other aspects of it, and one of those things is Taekwondo.